To order the meeting of the Williamsport City Council for Thursday, November 21st, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. roughly, and we're in City Council chambers. Please rise for the invocation by Councilwoman Fosnot and remain standing for the flag salute.
Let's pray. Hey God, we come here tonight with major decisions to make that affect all of us that live in this wonderful city. We thank you for the opportunity, dear God, to have lots of input, to be able to live in a country where we can share our thoughts and our ideas. We thank you for the ability to be able to make wise decisions based upon data that we are able to gather and conversations that we have with those that know what's happening within our community. Guide and direct us, give us wisdom and courage to do the right thing in all ways. We thank you, dear God, for all that you've blessed us with, and we ask this in your most precious name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Fosnot. We'll move to item 3, approval of City Council minutes dated 11/7/19.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or corrections from council? If not, Mrs. Frank, please.
Mrs. Fosnot?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes. And we'll go to item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had no requests tonight. Item 5, then, introduction of 3 new hires in the fire department. And Chief Heckman.
President Allison, members of council, everyone in attendance tonight, and those reviewing from home. Tonight we move on to another chapter, another transition within the Bureau of Fire. The end of the next week, we will retire off 3 of our elder gentlemen who have been on the department for 20-plus years, Platoon Chief Rundio and Engineers Arthur and Weaver. They're going to take a lot of knowledge, a lot of seniority with them, credibility. They're going to be 3 really good guys who are going to be walking out here healthy. They've earned their time, so God bless them. In the wake of them leaving, as I said, transition, we're excited to have tonight with us our 3 new cadets. The guys have been pounding it at Hack since August 19th for 2 of them, and joined by the 3rd one about 5 weeks after that, I believe, Hack Academy, all the way up until last Friday where they graduated. At this time, I'll have the 3 gentlemen come on up here. On behalf of the Williamsport Bureau of Fire, I'm just glad to announce the 3 newest recruits to the Bureau of Fire: Josh Newhard, Jonathan Hunsinger, and Justin Dunlap, the 3 newest members of the Bureau of Fire, your firefighters.
I just wanted to give, after we give a little brief introduction, give you a little insight into these 3 gentlemen before they actually get on the street. Obviously, they started their careers with us back in August, but prior to them even stepping foot on a Williamsport Bureau of Fire, suppression apparatus, they're completing about 700 hours in training, again, from August until now. They spent 13 weeks at the Fire Academy. They spent a week prior to that with us doing orientation. They've spent the last week or the last 4 days with us for orientation, and then they'll continue on orientation until next Wednesday prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. So, after about those 700 hours of training, we'll get them on the street and ready to go. And again, that's just entry-level basic training to get them prepared to function. Their careers are just starting. All of them will have a long time with us here in the city, some upwards of possibly 30 years, depending on how long he decides to go before retirement. So we're incredibly happy to have them. This is 12 new firefighters for us in the last 4 years. So over a third of our department has been replaced in the last 4 years. So much like the transition the police department has gone through over the past several years, we're much the same.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we welcome you. We're very grateful for you stepping forward. We're very proud of our fire department. They've have a wonderful reputation, really the anchor of Lycoming County. We're very professional, and the citizens of Williamsport love the security they have with the paid fire department and professionals that put their lives on the line every time they go out to fight a fire. Everyone's well aware of the dangers you face, but the courage you have. And we realize that you must have something inside of you that has brought you to this place, because you understand what it's all about at this point, and you're willing, still willing, and apparently your families are in support as well, and that's important too. So we're grateful to have you, looking forward to your service, and you have fine leadership to guide you, and great experience, and a long-standing history to live up to. So welcome aboard. We're glad to have you in the city. Mrs. Katz?
I want to say welcome. I do have a question. Are any of these gentlemen a legacy in their fathers?
No, they're the first timers.
Okay.
They started it now.
Congratulations, and keep safe.
Mrs. Fosman?
You look so young. And you are young. And it's so good to have. I remember 12 years ago, the fire department of the city of Williamsport decided to train some, or to put some of the council members through some of the exercises. I don't know if any of you remember that. Were you part of that, either of you?
No, I did not.
Well, I probably should not have been, but they put helmets on us, and they put the oxygen stuff on our back and all the gear, and we all went up to where they have the training, and we went into that facility, and I'm thinking about halfway up the steps, this is the stupidest thing I have ever done in my whole life. What a chore for you to do, and what a challenge for you to be able to do those kinds of things, and to be able to have the courage and the ability to do it. So God be with you, and thank you for your service, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
I'd like to, if I may, point out one thing that I was remiss with before. You know, these gentlemen spent 13 weeks away from their families, and some of their families are here, and I think it's incredibly important that we realize the sacrifices that they made, having these fathers, husbands away from their families for the last 13 weeks to get prepared, to have careers in the department. So I want to personally thank them for the support that they gave, our firefighters in that process, and give them a round of applause.
I'd like to just address one other thing that was said about the transition in the fire department and the police department. We're also going to be undergoing a transition on city council with the younger look to it. And it's a transition that's going on in a lot of institutions and businesses, governmental entities, really across the nation because of demographics. We need to embrace it and cooperate and do everything we can to make everybody successful. And that's our goal, to see all of you succeed. And Williamsport's getting a younger look to it, and that's always a good thing. So that's our future. So you're part of that, a bigger thing that's going on too. So expect great things.
Hey, guys. Have a good.
There's two other items with Chief Heckman, so we'll just move those up. They are item 10 and item 11. I'll give you a second to... We all good? Item 10, resolution for a global fire prevention grant. Mrs. Katz, or Mrs. Frank in short form, please.
Resolution FM Global Fire Prevention Grant.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Chief Heckman.
Okay, Mr. President, members of council, again, thank you for bundling this together. It was to make it a more quicker and expedited part of our session. I'm going to go on to say, I'm just basically going to pass this off to Mark. We did have this at Public Safety the other day. Went through that, and it moved on with a positive recommendation. That's why it's here before you tonight. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Killian. This is his. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council, members of the administration. So before you is a resolution to accept and authorize the expenditure of funds for the amount of $3,000 for the purchase of 5 data-enabled iPads for the Bureau of Fire. This is grant funding from FM Global, their fire prevention grant program. We went through the process with Public Safety Committee on Tuesday, answered questions that they had, and we actually have the check in hand, from FM Global. We did the grant presentation beginning of November, so now we're bringing it to you for further review.
Thank you. This was reviewed by Public Safety.
Public Safety did review this, and we passed it on with a positive recommendation. It's fantastic that we're able to receive grants like this, and we applaud the chief for working so hard to get this grant. It's appropriate that our professional fire department have the best tools available to them, and this technology will be so important. This iPad technology will be able to replace stacks and stacks of papers in the back of the command vehicle that it would take so long to leaf through those papers and try to figure out what they need to look at in the building, whereas an iPad, they just pull it out and bring it up just that quickly. And so when they arrive on the scene, they'll have all the information that they need to proceed through the building or whatever the emergency is, and be aware of all the problems that may be there and other things. So it's just so important that we bring the department up to this technological age. And so these will have a data plan, and as we understand, that is going to be about $3,300 a year for the data for these, and that's been built into the upcoming budget already. And again, that's necessary as these are mobile. They'll be all over the city. Not only will they help with the fires, but also should there be an opportunity to use them in the future for things like inspections, they'll be a great help for the fire department to do that as well, and be able to log everything in on scene, and it'll just be a great asset for our fire department. So having looked at all of that and talked through it all, and of course you see the copy of the check, there it is, we pass this on with a positive recommendation to the full body of council.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Ms. Mealy?
Explain to me, how are we currently storing the information that we'll be accessing from these iPads? Is it cloud-based?
No, so currently it's paper.
Right.
Yeah, so these iPads, the program that they use is a cloud-based program, is actually a web-based program, excuse me. Okay. So, just to give you a little insight, and I apologize for not explaining this a little better, I appreciate Councilman Henderson doing my job for me here. We were awarded the grant for 5 of these iPads. These iPads will be in frontline fire apparatus. Right. So both the engines, the ladder truck, the command vehicle. They will be used to access app-based web applications, one of which is a program called I Am Responding. That I Am Responding program will give us the ability to enter our pre-plan information in that program. And what that does is, upon dispatch to any emergency, that information automatically populates in I Am Responding, gives us turn-by-turn directions to the incident over a Google Earth, basically overlaid over Google Earth. Gives us all of our hydrant information that we input in from the Water Authority. Gives us any pre-plan information that we've input into the system on any commercial or residential properties where lock boxes are located, where fire department connections are located, where any building hazards may be. A multitude of information that currently we have in paper form in the back of a vehicle, which is incredibly inefficient to look through. So, so our current emergency reporting RMS, our records management system, is a cloud-based system. The program that we'll be using in conjunction with that is web-based.
Okay, got it. So we'll be able to deal with the RMS as well as
Correct. Yep, correct.
on the iPads. Got it.
Yeah, this will give us, we do have 2 tablets, which several years ago we purchased. Those are PC-based, Windows-based devices that work well for what we need them for on the scene, kind of after the incident has occurred and we're on scene and we can get access to them. It takes a little longer to get into information. We chose to go with the iPad specifically because of how user-friendly they are. Everybody carries, some type of smartphone. It all works with apps. It's easy to unlock. It's not a, long boot-up time. They can be on in the vehicles at all times, basically connected wirelessly through a cell plan and ready to go immediately.
Got it. Sounds good. And what was my last question? Does what we're purchasing, I'm assuming the majority of the purchase price is the iPad. Are we getting some sort of protective gear for them?
Yeah,
It sounds like-
so the grant is specifically for the purchase of the iPad and accessories, and those accessories include a ruggedized case and mounting hardware for the vehicles.
Got it.
So
And
yeah,
the
that's all.
And the $3,000 grant covers all of
Correct,
that?
that is built into the grant funding.
Got
yes.
it. But there's nothing left over for first year of implementation or
No.
anything? Got it. And it covers, do we need to purchase access to any of the apps or anything
No,
like that?
not, currently
Okay.
we do not. So actually, we're working with Old Lycoming Township Fire Department. Obviously, we're in an alliance with them. They have the IM responding system currently. Many of our firefighters have been using that system on their phones,
Got it.
again, for the directions, the turn-by-turn stuff that it provides now. So basically, we're going to piggyback onto their system for the time being to get our feet under us, see how we want to work through that, and then we'll make a determination down the road if we need to go with our own IM responding system. But right now, we'll be able to function under theirs.
Okay, excellent. And then my last question is, I guess that's about normal. What's the monthly cost? Is it just a monthly data plan, basically?
Yeah,
for
so the
these
monthly
iPads?
costs, my understanding in working with Chris Cooley from IT, it's $40 per device.
Got it.
So, yeah, we have five devices from this grant, and we've actually have a previous request into finance for the purchase of one additional.
Okay.
So that is the device that I would be using for inspections,
Okay.
Things that I do currently. So total, we'll have 6 iPads in service.
Okay, great. All right, that's everything I have, I think. Thank you.
Katz?
Just to explain to you, with all the papers that you go through that are in the back, are you going to have to scan all of that in?
No, so we're actually,
I'm thinking time.
yeah, so those papers are through a process called pre-planning. And what pre-planning is when we go out prior to an incident occurring and, we meet with maintenance people or responsible parties in some of our commercial properties, and we go and do walkthroughs of those properties, and we gather all the data that we need. Previously, that was in paper format, right? So earlier this year, we looked at, we revised our pre-planning process, we updated our operational guideline, and basically reintroduced our pre-planning program. And something that we've been doing over this last several years, but we've formalized it. So we're continuously updating those pre-plans. There's numerous pre-plans that are already existent that were in our old, several years old RMS that were not accessible via web-based. They were only, they were server-based at fire headquarters. So we were able to transfer some of that information, but we're continuously, almost on a daily basis, updating that currently.
So you can be up and running
Correct.
immediately?
Immediately, yeah.
Thank you.
Just a
Mrs. Wagner.
congratulations on the press that you got on this project. It was wonderful, and WBRE did it 4 or 5 times the same day, and wonderful press.
Yeah, I apologize for having to watch me on TV. But,
We're grateful for the advancement in technology and hopeful that City Council can soon begin to catch up in that area as well, and we can get rid of all this kind of
Yes,
stuff and
amen.
have technology-based information before us that we can access more readily than looking for it here and there. So thanks for leading the way.
thank you.
Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mrs. Bosnack.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes, and we'll go to item 11, resolution for fire civil service rules and regulation changes. Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
Resolution Fire Civil Service Rules and Regulation Changes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Chief Heckman?
Yes, here we are again. This is a evolving document within the civil service rules and regulations with the committee we have now made up of Jeff Reeder, Dr. Craig Miller, Mr. Forsberg, and Mr. Anthony, along with the union, fire administration. We are constantly evolving this. The solicitor, Austin, in front of us here, he's been part of this program too. Look at the legal aspects of things. There's been tons of questions. We've had outdated, verbiage in here. It's just been a good group effort. What you're going to see tonight is in the blue highlights within it, and I'm not going to go through them all. You went through public safety with a positive recommendation to move forward with this. Just with your acceptance, this brings everything up to date as far as we're concerned right now with promotions. Some verbiage in there in some of the medical area, I believe. Jeff, is there anything else they need to add other than?
As you mentioned, it's a working document.
Yeah.
A lot to go. The changes that you see there have been started since April of this year. We've been working through to get to this point. There's a lot more that need to be addressed to bring our standards and rules and regulations up to today's standards versus 50 years ago.
Yeah.
We're a little bit behind, huh?
Yeah, it's, well, it also has, those gentlemen, these four gentlemen that volunteer their time on the Civil Service
Yes.
Board, between myself and Chief Higgins in the Police Department, we've probably been pounding them pretty well, but it's all about, in the end of the day, getting the right processes in order for
Right.
civil service, making sure all the practices are fair and, they're equal across the board. And with times changing, we're starting to see this, not even to mention about gender identity, which we've talked about. There's just everything that we need to protect ourselves on a hiring end and those wishing to come here and work for us.
Right.
So again, the document will be back in 2020 at least once, I'm sure, or maybe twice, and that's not including what Chief Higgins in the police department do with these guys, but as we evolve this, we have some other aspects that we're going to continue to roll with and get this document up to standard to where we feel it's for our employees is the best document we can get. So thank you.
Right. And that's a good point about the people that serve on the board, and we appreciate it, Mr. Reeder, because you're unseen, but no one gets hired in crucial positions if that board isn't functioning, and we've experienced a little bit of that time. So we're very fortunate to have really good people there, and you're one of them. We thank you for that. This was reviewed by Public Safety.
It was, and again, we passed it on to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. We talked through a lot of these changes, and a lot of them are just kind of solidifying the practices of the current chief and just kind of making sure that we're all on the same page. We talked quite a bit about the promotion process, and I think it's worth mentioning that this document lays it out, that it's not just based on seniority. I think that's important. It's not just you get so many years and you're guaranteed a spot, but it's the best one for the job, and it's a very fair evaluation system. And so I really think that's important. That builds morale into the whole department as they know that they're valued, and this shows that as well. So that was one of the aspects that we thought was really helpful and encouraging to see in here. Of course, as was mentioned, there'll be a lot more changes coming, just as we continue to work through this document. But all in all, we felt it was very good and positive, and we're ready to go with it.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Other comments or questions from council? If not, Mrs. Frank on the resolution, please.
Mrs. Posner?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes. I am going to make another move. There's 6 resolutions on streets for gas main replacement project. They're all pretty similar. I think we can get through them quickly. And there's a representative here from
Yes.
UGI, so I think if we get those out of the way, we can move on.
Resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main replacement project by the City of Williamsport per UGI Utilities. And the first one is Almond Street.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second?
Motion and a second. Mr. Girardi.
Yes, what you have before you are 6 resolutions, all dealing with gas main work that has been mandated by the state to the gas company. We have them completed with the base repair. The things that won't happen this year before the plant's closed is the milling and overlaying of the street. They will all be done according to the resolution within 45 days after the plants are opened, which would include these 6, and then there's 2 other ones that were previously approved. One would be Campbell Street, and also Almond Street Phase 2. So come spring, 45 days in, we'll have a bunch of new roads paved and milled and overlaid in conjunction with our streets and parks with the combining the 2 services. And we do have, and this is a standard agreement, I can read through it, but this is what we do every year at this time. It's a standard type of material. If the base isn't 6 inches of base, they have to use high performance coal patch instead of just coal patch. If there's problems with any of the holes that open up, we can notify the gas company, or Adam will notify me, and we'll notify the gas company that need to be repaired. But at this point, they are repaired to the base, but there's just the cuts that are repaired. It's not the milling and overlay.
Right.
And this did go through Public Works and came in front of council with a positive recommendation. And we do have a representative of the gas company if you have any questions of him or myself.
Okay. It was reviewed by Public Works.
This did come to Public Works, and we did pass this on with a positive recommendation. What's going on with all of these street excavation are the cast iron has to be removed from all these streets by mandate by 2024. So for them to keep up with all these projects throughout the city is a huge, excuse me, a huge undertaking. So they do get backlogged every so often, but we do benefit from it also because our streets get fixed also. Excuse me. And like I said, this was passed on with to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you.
I think somebody else from Public Works can take over.
Other comments or questions? Yeah.
I don't know much that I would add much more to that, just that this is something that needs to be done. We want to, work in conjunction with the gas company. It's very important that we do that. And of course, this is a lot of work to be delayed and then caught up again in the spring. We were assured that that wouldn't be a problem at all with all of that work, catching it up in the spring either. So that's about it.
My
Mrs.
only
Faulkner.
concern is that you talk to each other, because it really bothers me when we dig up and we put something new in, and then we resurface the street, and then we dig it up and do something new again. So please communicate with each other so that we're not doing that. That's really important to the entire community.
We typically do that with the Water Authority, Sanitary Authority, the Gas Authority. Now, again, there comes a time every once in a while that we can mill and overlay, you get those heavy equipment on those roads, next thing you know, you have a lateral broke. Can't really do much about that, but I say 99% of the time, you are correct. We do try to communicate, make sure we don't have to go back in and dig the road up.
I don't think we can overstate the value of getting cast iron pipes out of the ground.
That's right.
It's pretty essential, yeah.
And if I'm correct, through the gas company, they're saying we are one of the largest areas that have the most cast iron in the city. So we have an older system. So that's the reason why they're putting a lot of time and effort into the city.
We appreciate it. No other questions or comments? Would you be amenable to us just going through these without stopping for questions or comments the rest of the way? We're just processing them? Okay. Mrs. Frank on item 13, and then just keep reading them in order, and we'll...
Mrs. Bosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes. Item 14.
So
Is there a
resolution-
motion? And we'll have the motion in a second. Is there a motion?
Second?
I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
Okay. Resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main line replacement project by the City of Williamsport for UGI. And the next one is for Glenwood Avenue.
And the vote, please.
Mrs. Fosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes. Item 15.
A resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main line replacement project by the City of Williamsport for UGI. And the next one is for Park Avenue.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion and a second. And the vote, please.
Mrs. Fosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, thank you. And item 16.
Resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main replacement project by the City of Williamsport for UGI Utilities. And the next one is Isabella Street.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. The vote?
Mrs. Fosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes. Item 17.
Resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main replacement project by the City of Williamsport for UGI Utilities. And the next one is Memorial Avenue.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. The vote, please.
Mrs. Fosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, and that motion passes. And item 18.
Resolution authorizing the excavation of certain streets for a gas main replacement project by the City of Williamsport for UGI Utilities. And the last one is Moore Alley.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second.
And if I can add one thing to that, I saw Miss Mealy.
Yes.
You have one that says Strawberry Alley, I believe. Is that what it says?
Something like
No, I
that.
changed
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah. There was an error made on my part when I brought it in. Strawberry Alley is west. You cross Arch Street, then it goes into the unnamed alley. I thought it was Strawberry Alley the whole way down, but it's not. It's an unnamed alley, so it is correct. She has the correct
So
resolution.
alley
in front.
off of Moore is the
Yes.
proper terminology. Got it.
We better name that alley.
Well, if you look at it, it looks like it should be Strawberry Alley, but
The vote, please.
Mrs. Fosna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, and the motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank.
thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening. We have another person waiting for an item, so I'm going to move item 12 up at this point. Mr. Winder and Mrs. Frank, could you read in short order, please?
A resolution authorizing the signing of a stormwater engagement and representation agreement between the City of Williamsport, the Williamsport Sanitary Authority, and the Saltzman Hughes PC.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion in 2 seconds, so we're ready to go. Mr. Winder, please.
This is a resolution authorizing the signature for the City of Williamsport to partner with the Municipal Water and Sewer Authority to engage a law firm, Salzman Hughes PC, to help come up with an agreement for a stormwater authority. Upon request of council, I was asked to lead the city's side on coming up with a stormwater agreement. Mike Miller was requested by the authority to lead their side. Mike had reached out to me after going to a seminar and asked if I would be willing to sit down and get on a phone conversation with Salzman Hughes PC. I did, and upon that conversation over the phone, Mike and I both feel that this firm would definitely be the most beneficial to both sides to come up with a stormwater agreement. They have written numerous stormwater agreements for other municipalities throughout the area. It would be a 50-50 cost share with the authority. We both feel that the amount of money will be limited due to us requesting models from this firm on what they've written for other people and us sitting down ourselves and picking apart what we like and just responding back and asking them to incorporate that into an agreement for us. Mike Miller is here if you have any questions for him. I know he did take it to his board yesterday morning and it was approved. It did go in front of Finance and passed on the positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Winder. Ms. Mealing, Finance.
Yes, this did, this did come before Finance, and we asked a handful of questions just about how, as we all know, we've been engaged in this process for 4 or 5 years now, attempting to create a stormwater authority under the auspices of the Water and Sewer Authority, and we've had a couple of agreements in hand, and then somehow or another things have fallen by the wayside. This, on the recommendation of Water Authority staff, which met this entity, this Salzman Hughes, at a PMAA conference, I believe, and had an opportunity to hear from a handful of their satisfied clients. This law firm, one of their specialties is basically mediating between different municipal entities to try and create an agreement that helps stage the handover of stormwater responsibilities from municipalities to authorities. And so part of the idea here in the long run, though, the agreement doesn't necessarily read precisely like this, is for this, this law firm to advise and oversee our own efforts to create a passover system of responsibilities from the city to the Water Authority for stormwater, beginning with MS4 and ending perhaps with pipes and et cetera, but beginning with some of the basic responsibilities that we are currently not particularly well equipped to handle, and they're very well equipped to handle, and then eventually hoping to move over to most of our underwater stormwater assets, or underground stormwater assets, hopefully not underwater stormwater assets. The process, which initially started out not particularly political, at some point or another got kind of heavily underwater itself in the politics of who had responsibility for what. And it seems both to the city's administration and to the Water Authority, I believe that this is the wisest path forward, so that all of us are sort of engaged and included and can formulate a plan that allows everyone to be comfortable with how we're moving. That said, the Finance Committee forwarded it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Comments or questions from council? Mr. Henderson.
Just a question, a couple questions, I guess. Do you know how many Water Authority members how many are serving on expired terms right now who look to be either reappointed or replaced in the very near future?
Do you have any idea? Yeah.
I'm sorry if I throw off the balance of the camera. I think
They're
that
just
number,
looking at your torso right now, Mike. It's okay.
I think the number is somewhere 5. 4 or
Okay.
5. I'd have to look and consult the paperwork, but
Okay. And then, of course, we know that there will be 4 new council members sitting up here in less than 2 months. And we
Right.
also know that there'll be a new administration as well. The only reason I bring that up is not because I'm against the concept of having a mediator work through things.
No.
There's been a long delay already, and I understand that. It just, wow, in the last month before everything changes over, I can't help but have to question that. And so can you speak to why now and not in, say, 2 months?
Okay. This process for Mike and I started 2 months ago. So we're, for us, right in line.
Yes.
The only reason that I had brought this now is, and I mean no disrespect to anybody leaving council or anybody coming on to council, but there's going to be a bigger delay for us to bring everybody up to speed that comes onto council in January versus starting this now, bringing them up to speed as we keep moving forward. It is going to stall the entire process. It's going to put us out even more than 3 years. And as far as the mayor-elect, he's been involved in this for the past 2 years. And I would say that so far, I feel he's been kept up to speed on my end at least.
And I understand that, you know, there will definitely be a learning curve and a lot to, you know, there's definitely going to be some kind of a delay if it were, you know, to be pushed off till that point. I don't want to delay the process.
No, and I guess the other thing is just for us to give you a little overview of what we're looking at moving forward. I believe we discussed like a 5-year plan. The first stage would actually be just to, right now, we have no idea where the pipes are underground, what connects into them. So we would have a lengthy process of just mapping out the pipes before this even would really become a full-blown authority. You know, this is basically just a start for us to get an agreement together. I don't believe the agreement would really be completed and definitely wouldn't make it in front of council till after the new year.
Right.
After new members are in here, new members are in at the authority.
Another question, this agreement that we're working towards, is this a, you know, a wholesale like what we've been working on, or is this going to be kind of a piecemeal?
I think what we need to look at is the initial agreement is not going to be scuttled. We're not going to lose all of that work. So the initial agreement that we were working on that seems to have floundered was this, in aggregate, we're going to move the whole system in one fell swoop. I think the approach we're going to take here is not necessarily lose that work, but move in a smaller steps, incremental structures, look at the timeline for compliance, things that we need to do and complete, and get those agreements out of the way first so we properly define who will be doing what and move through this in an orderly and progressive fashion. Not necessarily just move it one kit and caboodle. We know we have certain thresholds, dates that we have to meet, and the agreements would be tailored. There would be a series of agreements tailored so that we addressed each one of those thresholds and did it in a timely fashion. So I think it's not so much as a wholesale, here's the system in one fell swoop. It would be more of, let's knock these certain criteria out of the way in a progressive fashion.
Is it reasonable to say that in light of that, and in light of what you've said, Mr. Winder, about trying to find out what the pipes actually are, is it reasonable to think that we're going to be using this firm for quite some time?
I think we're going to try to minimize the amount we use the firm because we want to keep costs down clearly. I think they could be with us for a while, yes, but I don't know that it's basically on how much Adam and I are going to need their expertise. I think we can work out the details. We'll try to do the majority of that work, and then he would just be putting what we worked out into some sort of legal agreement, which then our respective solicitors could review from the side of the city and the side of the authority.
And I, you know, appreciate that. You guys have been working hard on this, and I mean, I don't think we can expect anything more from you on this, because you've been working very hard, and we appreciate that. You know, these are just questions I have to consider because, you know, we're talking about taxpayers' money, and it's $105 for the clerk per hour and $275 for the attorney, $275 per hour.
And once again, respectfully,
Yes.
I think the reason that Mike and I were chosen to do this was because we're the ones that work with these systems every day.
Yes.
It's very, I hate to say it this way, but it's very hard for you guys to make a decision on what to do with a pipe when you really don't work with the pipe or know what's really going underground. So I feel like council came to me and the board came to him in trust that we would lead this in the right direction. So I guess that's my
Yeah.
stance on the whole thing, and at this point, this is just opening up the door for us to get something started moving into the future. It's not locking us into any agreement, any length of time, anything of that nature. At any point, if Mike or myself feel that we need to hold things up, then I feel we have the opportunity to do that. And like I said, we're not, like Mike said, we're not looking to get into any extensive cost. We just need somebody that has knowledge of writing these to give us something to work with.
Right.
And let us sort it out and then pass it on to our solicitors to review it from there.
Yes. And I understand that, and obviously you guys know a whole lot more about this stuff than I do. And I certainly have an appreciation for that. You know, I wouldn't presume to, tell you what needs to be done.
Well, no, and I mean, I'm on the same page with you guys that we're not here to waste taxpayer money. We're here to look for the best resolution for everyone. For our side of it, we not only have to look at the city as a whole, taxpayers, et cetera, but we also have the side of our unions creating a grievance or a lawsuit because we're technically taking work away from them. So it's a delicate situation for us all the way around. By contract, these individuals are supposed to be able to do this work, certain criteria of the work. So we have to hold the balance of council, the taxpayers, the ratepayers, and our employees all at the same time for the betterment of the entire city so that we don't end up into a litigation suit because we're removing work from a union. It's...
Which we have not done at all. at
No,
this
no,
point,
no,
'cause
we
none
haven't
of this
done it
has
yet.
happened. Yeah, and the other question I would have is, if we were to approve this tonight, how quickly would we start to use them?
I'm going to say right away. I mean, I would like to actually get their models to us so we can start reviewing them.
Our board is looking to move on this quicker, too. We'd like to
Yes.
start developing some of the
Yeah.
agreements.
And I have to say, I want to get this moving too. I have no desire to delay. There's just a lot, this is the, the month before a lot of major changes happen, and I'd hate to see something happen where a new water authority or a new council or a new administration says, you know what, we want to shut this thing down, or whatever. And I would hope that that doesn't happen, but, we have to consider that possibility as well.
Right, and the other thing to remember is this has got to fit into my budget.
Yeah,
That's coming before you in a couple weeks.
right.
So if I don't put it in now because we're going to put it off and I really don't know what I'm going to run into, that puts me out another year.
Do you have an idea about how much you will put in for this, or
I
have
think
already,
Around $5,000 in contract services
for the year?
for the year. Because like I said, we're not anticipating a huge cost and we're looking at doing things in phases. The biggest thing would be just to start working on something to get it moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mrs. Foster?
I think it's important for us to trust the fact that you are collaborating and working together, which is a very positive thing for all of us to see, and that we should move forward as quickly as possible.
Mrs. Katz?
I think we found out over the years that there are some attorneys, attorneys are specialized in different aspects. And I think this has been held up in one of the attorney's offices because I think the legalese of all of this, they don't understand some of the technical terms. And if we get an attorney that understands these terms, this will move it forward faster. And I think this is why I would think this would be beneficial to both sides, because we have somebody that is an expert in this. And I think this is what we should do, because it's been held up for too long. And I think that's one of the aspects that because of, and we've heard this from both the authority and from here, that the language just wasn't fitting. The pieces weren't fitting. And I think just to have an expert do this will benefit from it.
I think one thing we haven't talked about is the reason we're in this situation. There's mandates that have come down from on high that we have to complete this, and there's a timeline that's been put upon us, and we don't have all the time in the world to complete some of these steps. So where are we at there? Could you give a brief synopsis? Or is it too?
That might be.
I mean, right now, we have a PRP plan that is still in the balance of being approved, a pollution reduction plan. That's going to come up at budget time. That's where we are in partnership with Loyalsock Township, sharing costs for implementing BMPs. But there's a 5-year plan there that we have to meet, we only have 5 years to meet the criteria. You have the MS4 aspects that we have to meet certain credits of that. I mean, our street sweeper does count for that, but there's a lot of other things, and how hard are the standards going to become? I mean, you remember most of our infrastructure was put in the 1950s. We're doing what we can to repair it, and like with UGI, Joe was up here for them earlier, just about every day, they're digging up a piece of ground, and I have to go out because there's a pipe there that nobody knew was there, and either they discover it, they break it, we have to determine if it's any good, if it's still used. Graphius Run's another prime example, where it branches off exactly. There's not very many people that are clear on that. What actually comes into it, what size pipes. There's just a wide variety of things that, I think I said it at Finance. I mean, I could go out and camera these pipes and start GPSing them and doing things of that nature, but I'm going to come before you and ask you to help me purchase a $300,000 piece of equipment that's going to require 4 people and probably 3 years of just cameraing pipes to determine what is where. There's so many requirements we have to meet with the MS4, the PRP, I mean, the stormwater separation from the sanitary. It's just going to keep growing, and at what point do we put the burden on the taxpayers instead of everybody across the city?
Ms. Mealy?
Just to expand on that last little thing that Adam said, the city's, one of our main interests, I think, in creating a stormwater authority under the auspices of the Water and Sewer Authority is that, the Water and Sewer Authority already has the infrastructure necessary to manage our stormwater system. But the secondary issue is that when the city needs to finance some sort of major undertaking, we raise taxes. And only about 60% of land in the city, the majority of our taxes are property taxes, only about 60% of the land in the city is currently taxable. The Water Authority, the Sewer Authority, and the Stormwater Authority would be able to levy a stormwater fee on all of the city's users, not merely our taxpayers. And what that means is a much more equitable distribution of the expense of anything related to our stormwater system. So that, I think, is the is one of our long-term concerns, is to find the most equitable way to handle the cost of stormwater improvements that are increasingly required at both the state and national level. All of that said, this is a very small step toward a very large undertaking, and I think to perhaps assuage Mr. Henderson's concerns a little further, I'd note that what Adam said, that while we make this initial decision to retain a company to help us formulate these documents, all of those documents will come before both a new city council and a new water authority, sewer authority board in 2020 and beyond, and there will be multiple steps along the way. Ideally, all of them completed before we get another new council and another new water authority board, so that we can complete this process sometime in the next several years. But we will have multiple opportunities to examine how we're moving forward, and that's the nature of the project. Is that now it's staged out. It's not all one fell swoop, and so I don't think we need to worry about trespassing on the rights or the decision-making abilities of future generations of membership here, or necessarily on any of those backtracking, because this will be a long and staged out system that they'll have ample opportunity to understand before we undertake it.
Mr. Henderson.
I appreciate that, and I have every interest in seeing this go forward. I just want to remind everybody a little bit of the history that causes my hesitation. In spite of our being on the same team, in spite of our serving the same people, and in spite of our having the same goal, as in to transfer these stormwater assets to a new authority, in spite of all that, the reality is that for 2 years, politics has stopped the process. And that's the sad fact. And so that's where we are. That's the unfortunate reality that causes hesitation on my part. And so, you know, anytime you see something like this, where we could potentially, and let me just ease your concerns by saying that I have an intention of voting yes on this. But while this is all being worked out, we're going to be paying somebody to be the adult in the room, because we haven't been able to do that for 2 years. And it's unfortunate that we've come to this place, but we need this now. And I understand that need. And that's my take on the situation. We need to do it. We need to move this forward, and we need somebody with the knowledge with making these kind of transfers. It's unfortunate we couldn't do this 2 years ago, but here we are. So I have every intention of voting yes.
Mrs. Katz.
I'm going to say I agree with you, Joel. I sat on the committee that worked on this for over a year, and due to politics, everything was set to go, but due to the politics, it was stopped. And here we are. We're at ground zero again, and it just is very frustrating that there was a total waste of time, a total waste of money. We put how much money into this study? I can't remember. How much was it, Mike, that was put into this study? And it just stayed there flat. And it's very frustrating when you see time and money wasted. And, you know, we've got to move forward with this, because it is a mandate that's coming down. And it just, you know, we've got to, you know, somewhere along the line, we've got to stop the political nonsense.
To assuage your fears, I think we can pick up major components of that study and move them forward. I think they've served as a basis. It's just a matter of us establishing the methodology in which they're used. So.
I certainly hope so, because a lot of time and work was put into it.
I just want to add one more thing. Mr. Miller, the event that happened on Campbell Street with the pipe collapsing, that's indicative of some of the things that are under the ground, and that was quite expensive.
That was a combined system.
Yes.
There it was quite expensive. I think we ended up at about $491,000.
That was, yeah, that was
You have a
one
beautiful
block.
street on Campbell Street now.
So, we don't know how many of those kinds of pipes exist in the city, and, yeah.
We do know, our pipes are older. We do know how many feet of brick-laid sewer we have, and we have intent of replacing that or lining it, so.
Right. So,
And that's just brick-laid sewer. That does not include brick-laid runs.
Right.
You carry the stormwater. Newberry, there's 3 of them. You come through town, there's quite a few more, not to mention all the terracotta pipe.
I think, you know, they were built to last, but they weren't built to last under the kind of traffic and weight that we have on our streets today. So I think that was like a little warning shot across the bow that we can have more of those kinds of events. So we're either going to address the system after every massive failure and spend a lot of money to fix it, or do it in a programmed controllable way where the costs are spread out evenly instead of swallowing it all at once. And I think that's the benefit of approaching it this way. And it's just a reality we face regardless if there are mandates or not. There's an infrastructure mandate coming from the infrastructure itself. So, other comments or questions? Then we'll have the vote, please. Mrs. Frank?
Mrs. Sposna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. And the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Frank. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and effort. We'll go up to item 6.
An ordinance 46-year 2020 community development budget, second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second for the final reading of our community development budget for 2020.
Good evening. Yes, this is our 2020 community development budget for our community development block grant program and our home investment partnerships program. There have been no changes or additions since the first reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Young. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion, please.
Mrs. Sposna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Thank you, Mrs. Young. Item 7. Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
A resolution to approve amending the Pennsylvania Municipal Health Insurance Agreement.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and this was reviewed by Finance.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Ms. Chappelle.
This is a resolution to approve amending the Pennsylvania Municipal Health Insurance Cooperative. It's the member agreement. Specifically, Article 6, Section 1, and Article 7, Section 1. In Article 6, Section 1, the new language clarifies that the employer has the responsibility for accurate enrollment, and if a person is found to be ineligible, it is the employer's responsibility to pay the claim. Article 7, Section 1 has a minor wording clarification on payments and premiums. The new language is to clarify that each member has the responsibility to pay all obligations billed to them as member. This amendment has been reviewed by the solicitor, and it did go to Finance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Mealy.
Okay. Finance did forward this to the full body of council with a positive, albeit somewhat reluctant, recommendation. These are clarifications to the agreement that are, well, not in our favor nor out of our favor, I suppose, precisely, but
Yes.
unfortunate side effects of the current health insurance environment in the U.S.
I agree.
The Article 6 in particular relates to the fact that well, something that I was unaware of, and I think all of us are quickly learning in the city, which is that we have multiple people insured under the city's health insurance plan, dependents, spouses, as well as both retirees and current
Correct.
employees. And we have, what, 5 different health insurance plans?
8, I think.
There you go.
I'm still learning.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
still learning.
8 different health insurance plans, any one of which, depending on their particular affiliation as well as their employment status, any given employee, dependent, or spouse might fall under. If that employee, dependent, or spouse files a claim, is enrolled under the wrong plan for their particular status within the city, and they file a claim, that claim can be denied at this point by that carrier, because of course they're not carried by that carrier, they're carried by another carrier. But it is entirely our responsibility to make certain that as people move through these different health insurance plans at different points in their employment and their retirement, they are classified under the right portion of our health insurance. We have, I believe, Mr. Pavlak said something in the neighborhood of 700 covered individuals within the city's health insurance bracket. That being obviously spouses, retirees, current employees, and dependents. And so, of course, for Ms. Chappelle, tracking down all 700 people and figuring out whether or not they're filed under the proper plan is quite a bit of legwork. All of which is to say that, according to Mr. Nichols, who also participated in the discussion, it used to be that you might be able to get a pass if you accidentally had somebody enrolled under the wrong plan because they had changed status, but now you do not. So God forbid we should have an employee who has a major health event while being enrolled under the wrong branch of our insurance. We foot the bill for that entire cost. The insurance company will no longer handle it. That's the major impact, and it's not, I don't believe, an optional amendment to the agreement or anything like that. This simply is part of what the agreement looks like moving forward. Every municipality within the consortium has accepted it. But it is, the healthcare system, I think, gets more and more Byzantine as we go forward here in the U.S. And this is one particular example of it, and the ways in which even large municipalities can get caught somehow or another on the wrong side of our health insurance. This is an indicator of it for us. We forwarded, as I said, to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Questions or comments from council tonight? Everybody's on board because it's an important thing. Thank you for bringing this to our attention and doing this work.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mrs. Spasna.
Yes.
Mr. Noviello.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes. Item 8.
Can I ask Ms. Chappelle one quick follow-up question on that just
Okay.
occurred to me? Those 8 different healthcare plans that our employees, that our covered individuals are under, are those dictated by us or by the consortium?
Those are ones that are with the collective bargaining agreement, so.
Got it. So
yeah.
they're kind of through our union agreements,
right.
but then provided by the health insurance consortium? Interesting. Oh, man. Okay. I may be interested in having a conversation with you when it's not, when everybody else doesn't have to sit through it,
Sure,
about exactly how
sure.
that works out. Thank you.
Item 8, Mrs. Frank, in short form, please.
Resolution to approve a letter of agreement between the City of Williamsport and Bloomsburg University for an intern for the city.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Thank you. And Ms. Chappelle.
This is a resolution to approve the intern agreement between the City of Williamsport and Bloomsburg University. It's for a 5-year term. Internships are so important to students as they gain practical hands-on experience in their area of study. A Bloomsburg student has submitted her resume for an internship in HR. The internship would begin December 16th and end January 21st. The city benefits from having an intern by increasing our visibility in college campuses. What better way to get students interested to work for us? Having an intern will help foster leadership skills in current employees. As current employees mentor and supervise interns, they will gain valuable leadership skills. This can be great training for an employee who wants to move into a management position. Mentoring and guiding others often motivates employees to hold themselves more accountable and become effective leaders. Adding interns enhances leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chappelle. This was reviewed by Finance.
Correct.
This was reviewed by the Finance Committee and forwarded to the full body of council with no recommendation. We had we sent it with no recommendation precisely because we couldn't really make a determination about the wisdom of moving forward with this particular internship. And the agreement, Ms. Chappelle, remind me, applies only to winter internships or to any internship across the board for the next 5 years?
To any student that reaches out to us that would like to serve in an internship role with the city in any capacity, yes.
So clearly interns within city government are, generally speaking, a desirable element for all the reasons that Ms. Chappelle just cited. But Ms. Katz and I were the two members of the Finance Committee present at Tuesday's meeting, and our questions predominantly revolved around the particular term of this internship, which runs from the middle of December to the end of January. It's a five-week stint, and I think our concern was largely that it's not, especially those last 2 weeks of December, are not by and large perhaps a period of peak efficiency in the American workforce. And so we weren't quite certain, given that I believe the city work week's already 35 hours, right? And we're promising this intern 40 hours of experience weekly. We're perhaps overextending ourselves a little bit there, but we were just concerned, I suppose, that the amount of time, given that it's a 5-week internship, that this person would probably take a few weeks to come up to speed, and that those first 2 weeks might well be spent by and large with various and sundry vacations taken out for holidays, might not be maximum efficiency, that this particular, that winter internships might not be well suited to the city's schedule and to maximum utility for us. We weren't really, and it's hard to say without going through the process once, but if we do decide to move ahead with the winter intern this year, I think that it would be very important that we document the number of staff hours that we put into the training of the person versus the what sort of utility we might be able to receive in return. Because, you know, I think it's possible in a 5-week period to spend quite a bit of time bringing someone up to speed and have them really accomplish very little that we could turn around and find of use moving forward. You know, especially if that person's first 2 weeks are largely taken up with things like Christmas holidays, and then they have about 3 weeks to get up to speed before the internship concludes. All of that said, I think we did observe that this is a woman, as you'll see from her resume, who spent quite a bit of time with the city's recreation department already. So she is a little bit versed in the material that she'll be interning with. So we didn't feel that while I think an internship arrangement with Williamsport may well be beneficial for us, we weren't entirely certain about this particular internship opportunity, and we sent it to the full body of council with no recommendation. And I will defer to both Ms. Katz and Mr. Allison, who was sitting in on the meeting, to cite the things that I probably forgot.
I don't think we forgot a thing. Ms. Katz.
When we discussed this, since this was supposed to be an intern from the recreation department, we felt that that is a dead period of time with the rec department. And the other thing that I had concerns with is that we have a rec director who really is just getting his feet wet, has no idea what's going to happen here. So you have somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing yet, and we're going to have somebody as an intern. I don't think it's beneficial to that intern to be working under somebody who's still trying to learn so many different things. So I just thought it was a waste of time, even though it's not costing the city anything. It really is money, time and money wasted. And I feel it would take away from what our rec director should be learning himself instead of trying to teach somebody at this point. And 5 weeks is not a long period of time, especially when it's a dead period of time. There's nothing really going on as far as the parks, the pools, or anything like that. That's a period of time when the rec director is starting to get his programs ready for the summer. And with him not ever doing this before, I think there's a huge curve here. And I don't think I would like to see him distracted.
Does the internship requirement specifically have to be for the recreation department?
No. And, you know, I was just listening to your comments, and I was thinking I could certainly use the intern in HR to help with the enrollment process as well. So she could audit the files, make sure that all the data is correct on all the open enrollment information, get some packets around. And I'm looking forward to working with Sean. You know, the two of us will work closely on the hiring for the programs, and it will take us a little time to get organized, and I think the intern would be really valuable in helping us with that.
I mean, it's just it's an internship. I mean, I don't know, I guess we built a pipeline kind of, in the way my thought process, I went through an internship in college. It was very beneficial to me. It was a requirement for my program. And so I think it's just an opportunity that we provide from the city standpoint that could create a pipeline. You know, I agree that, you know, if there's off a week for Christmas, but I don't think.
The only day I'll be off is Christmas. I'll be here all the other time.
Right, so that's
for
what,
her.
I mean, I think we can provide, that's why I was wondering if it was specific to recreation.
See, we were told it was for recreation.
Yeah, so if it's not,
Right, and I was just thinking, listening to all
know
of,
if we need
you
to
know, the
amend it.
conversation
A better- it
tonight,
would
that
be a better
maybe,
department.
yeah, I could use her too in HR, and
so do we need to amend or is that a possibility to just amend it? I mean, it's not costing us anything, it's just an internship. I think it's beneficial to the student and to future students
correct.
for us to provide internships. Not specifically to this, you know, it's beneficial to this student, but even down the line. I know like Cumming College has an internship program, I believe, where they've been a part of the city. We've had internships here. I mean, I don't know.
Even.
Right, so, I mean, if we need to just amend it to say, if we even need to do that, I don't know.
It says here in the recreation department,
Yeah, in the recreation department, yes.
in the
Mr.
memorandum.
The
Councilman
resolution
Slaughter, I
doesn't say.
I don't think that an amendment would be necessary because
Yeah, the resolution is just
the resolution
general.
is really
Just to create an affiliation.
to agree to the
Right,
affiliation
right,
agreement. I
okay.
mean, the individual who's been put forward to be the first intern, I mean, it would be up to
Right,
the
they could figure it out,
administration
right.
Discretion
Yeah,
and
and
council's discretion
Bloomsburg too, could, yeah,
place that person.
right, okay.
As one who's supervised many interns in the process, hundreds of them, I think this is very generic. That person could be an observer and experience the entire city government process. It doesn't have to be, there's nothing here that's very specific in the resolution. And it's
Right.
not a person that we're looking to help us in any way. It's a person that wants experience and understanding government and the human resource process in government. It could be streets and parks, it can be RVT, it could be
Correct.
anything. And I think those experiences are very helpful for this person. This is about this person, not so much about us being able to use them for benefit of the city. They could in the future, after their experience, and find out which they're most interested in and which they like the very best. And the experience creates that kind of opportunity. I think that's our responsibility as a municipality.
Thank you.
Mr. Henderson?
Yeah, I agree. I think internships are very helpful. And I would just note, as was already mentioned, this is just an agreement with Bloomsburg University. It's not with this individual, but it's just with the university for 5 years. And so the individuals and the specific times and all of that, that can be sorted out because we've got a 5-year period we're working with here. So as far as the individual, maybe there's some adjustments that need to be made. But this agreement, I think it's great.
Do too.
Mrs. Kent?
In the memorandum, it states the rec department, did she request that?
She requested HR-related duties, and what I could think of in the time frame was Sean and I partnering to work on the summer rec programs.
I don't want somebody to get turned off in city government or anything that's
Right,
going on like that.
right.
And there's been some cases, they've been placed in areas that was not beneficial.
Right.
And if you could do it in HR, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think it will be a positive experience for her, for the both of us.
No other comments? Good. Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mrs. Fosno?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. And item 9, in short form, please, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution for a contract between the Williamsport Bureau of Police and Shallow Creek Kennels Incorporated.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Chief Hagan.
Good
welcome.
evening. President Allison, members of council, members of the administration. Before you is a resolution to authorize the appropriate city officials to execute a contract for one of our officers to go to Canine Academy in December 30th at Shallow Creek Kennels Incorporated in Sharpsville, Pennsylvania. The details of this were discussed at the Finance Committee on Tuesday, and it was recommended to be brought before the full body of council. And the costs are listed in the contract for services to total of $14,500 for a dual-purpose narcotic detection patrol police service dog. And as I said, we talked about the details of it. We're excited about it. It's our first of what we hope to be 3 canine teams. We have a pretty extensive plan here involving this first team that involves the repurposing of Crown Victoria, the construction of a police dog kennel at the residence of Officer Minier, and the change of uniforms for the members of this unit as they become members of the unit, and just the development of a policy for the canine unit. We do have an old one from our old unit, but there's some necessary changes. So we're excited as we are in the middle of doing this work. It's going to create a safer environment for our citizens and our officers alike, as we've discussed earlier in the year when we talked about opening the program up. So this is just another phase. So I'm open to any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Chief Hagan.
Yes, sir.
It was reviewed in Finance.
Yes, this was reviewed by Finance and forwarded to the full body of council with a positive recommendation. I had one question, which Chief Hagan then had emailed me about this afternoon. I was just reviewing the documentation, and it fully covered it. The contract did not specifically state, obviously, if the handler that we've appointed to train with the dog is for some reason not up to snuff and fails to pass the class, that's on us. But I was concerned that if the dog, for some reason, didn't meet standards, what was our recourse then? And the entity, the Shallow Creek Kennels, with whom we're working for both the dog and the training, will have extra canines in training such that if our dog somehow failed during the training process, we would be able to replace it with another dog that was currently in the training process. And the dog, once it has graduated with the handler, will be given a warranty. Which can be voided, of course, by poor activity on our part, but otherwise will apply to the dog. I actually didn't see the term of the warranty, but I'm assuming it's a couple of years, right?
Yes, the warranty, give me a moment. There are different parts to it. We have a sample warranty that takes effect the day of graduation, and it covers, it's a 1-year health guarantee, and there are different provisions. One is skeletal, which covers hip, elbows, and spine. The other is genetic. Any genetic disease that precludes the canine from performing the tasks of a police service dog. There are all sorts of conditions that cover whether or not it was caused by us or whether it was something that was there and they protect themselves in the agreement. But if it's something that we could not be held responsible for, we have a 1-year health guarantee. So that's a good thing. Just for what it's worth, I've talked to these people. As I said to Finance earlier in the week, I was sitting in there from little old Williamsport, and the Seattle Police Department and the National Security Agency were talking to them at the same time, and they made 30 minutes or an hour for me. The entire Colorado Springs Police Department sends its entire K-9 unit there, and other units from all over the United States military, United States government, and all over the United States from police agencies. This is one of the foremost, this tiny little place out there is one of the foremost K-9 academies in the country. We're very, very privileged to be there. These are not the kind of people, I got no sense that these are the kind of people that are going to try to run one by us if something goes wrong. Having said that, I did look into the question. It was a very good question, and they were able to answer it, so we're satisfied with that.
I think the 1-year warranty, it came as a bit of a surprise to me, but I'm glad to know that, because my secondary concern was that if for some reason the K-9 failed in the course of the training, that we would have to start over again and lose staff time on the second training round. But that also won't be a concern, because I didn't realize they have multiple K-9s in training who were not a part of anyone's program yet. So that said, as I said, we forwarded this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Chief Hagan. Other comments or questions?
Question. I have a very foolish question. When it talks about the class schedule, the 2020 class schedule, it talks about the trainers, November the 11th through January 31st, and the handlers, December 30th through the 31st. A trainer, to me, is someone that teaches you how to do something, and a handler would be the person that would actually have the dog. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. What they're discussing there, they actually train trainers. So people who want to become K-9 trainers, there is a 12-week program that costs $6,000, and it's they certify you under their standards to become a trainer. We're actually hiring a trainer who has more than 2 decades of experience and owns his own company. Given the youth in our program and the fact that we have someone who's going to be an assistant trainer and may be suitable to become a trainer someday, but we don't have anybody ready for that kind of status yet. So that school that you see there, trainers, is a separate one from the handlers. The handlers is what, that school is what we're sending Tyson Minier to, and that typically is a 6-week program. However, the one winter class that we're sending Minier to is one that doesn't have as many students, so they get more repetitions and they graduate quicker. So it's only 4 weeks if you go in the winter, because there's not nearly as many students involved.
So ours is, we're just dealing with the handlers part, not the trainers part, because we'll
Right.
have a trainer that will be training our handlers.
Yes, ma'am. We have, as part of
Okay.
our plan, we're hiring, or we intend to hire Mr. Timothy Karshnak of the Muddy River K-9 Academy. He's from the Harrisburg area. He was here when we started the program, when we did that vote here a couple months ago, and has been working along with us, advising us. Probably at the next council meeting, I'll have a contract for services with him to bring before council.
Okay, so ours will start December the 30th?
December the 30th, and he is scheduled to graduate January 31st.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? I guess we're ready to go, and again, thank you, Councilwoman Katz, for spearheading this for City Council, and
It was a pleasure. It was really great.
and Chief Hagan for being enthusiastic support, and we thank Sioka dealerships immensely for their generous.
$43,000
Yeah.
plus donation, extraordinarily generous. Yes, thank you, Sioka. Yes, sir.
Mrs. Frank, on the motion, please.
Mrs. Posner.
Yes.
Mr. Nubiallo.
Yes.
Mr. Henderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter.
Yep.
Ms.
Yes.
Mealy.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Allison.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. We will now move to certificate of appropriateness for Harb. We're going to have to take these.
Yeah, split 'em up.
Yeah, we're going to have to split these up because Councilwoman Neely has to abstain on the first one. So we'll do item 2 first, under Harb. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
And it's 411 West 4th Street, Herdick Properties, and constructing a shed and a lot of other neat stuff. Are there questions or comments from anyone on council? Then we'll have the vote, please, on that particular item. Mrs. Frank?
Mrs. Fosna?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Abstain.
Mr. Allison?
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Motion passes 6-0-1. Item 4, Peabody Investments, 300 Campbell Street, doing a lot of repairs and fixing things up, and it all looks like good stuff. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments from council? We'll have the vote then, please.
Mrs. Fosna?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thanks. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Except for filing, Controller's Report from September 2019, Finance Committee Minutes, September 10th, 2019, Codes Reports, April, May, and June for 2019, Public Works Minutes for September 10th, 2019, Veterans Memorial Minutes, September and October 2019, Financial Audit 2018, and Williamsport Bureau of Police second and third quarterly reports. And that's all of those. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments, questions? Hearing none. Mrs. Frank, please.
Mrs. Fosna?
Yes.
Mr. Noviello?
Yes.
Mr. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Slaughter?
Yes.
Ms. Mealy?
Yes.
Mr. Allison?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you, Mrs. Frank. And the announcements. The next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be held on Thursday, December 5th at 2019 at 7:30 p.m. right here in City Council chambers. That will be a busy week, though, because we have our first budget session. That will be Monday, December 2nd, and the second budget session will be Wednesday, December 4th, and both of those are at 7 p.m. So we'll have Monday and Tuesday, 7 p.m., and then Thursday at 7:30 for our regular council meeting of that week. Upcoming meetings, Monday, November 25th, 12 p.m. Planning Commission, Tuesday, November 26th, 3:30 p.m. ERC, Thursday and Friday, City Hall is closed for the Thanksgiving holiday, November 28th and 29th. Monday, December 2nd, 12 p.m. Fair Housing, 7 p.m. is our budget session 1. Tuesday, December 3rd, 1 p.m. Finance Committee, 2:30 p.m. Public Works, 3:30 p.m. Public Safety. Wednesday, December 4th is our budget session. Thursday, the 5th is our regular council meeting. Are there any comments or questions from council tonight? Mrs. Katz had her hand up first.
Just for Public Works, Adam, could you tell about leaf pickup, please?
Leaf pickup is ongoing. We start the east city line, west city line, work our way to the center. Due to the leaves coming down all at one period, it is taking an extensive amount of time to make our way through the city. It will be ongoing right through the winter.
And it's only leaves and
Right,
they cannot?
leaves only, correct.
Okay. I think we've all been questioned about it, so we're going to make a public announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Winder. Ms. Mealy.
Ms. Frank, have we had any requests for the ERC meeting on next Tuesday?
None so far.
Well, I think in that case, perhaps, given that it falls on a holiday week anyway, we may just as well cancel it at this point unless anyone in the administration has any material they think they'd like to be bringing. So, otherwise, Janice is going to be hounding me about it on Tuesday, and I'll not get back to her.
We'll be calling each other.
Seeing as there have been no requests, I think we can just go ahead and cancel that.
Very good. Council.
Couple things. It's really looking great in the city with all the decorations going up. Mr. Winder, please tell Streets and Parks we really appreciate that. The Historic District looks great and ready for Victoria and Christmas next weekend, and Brandon Park is beginning to light up, and that's kind of exciting as we're able to see that. I also was, this past week, I attended the Veterans Memorial dedication of their new, well, not dedication, but their thank you to Penn College for the work that Penn College did for the building of the wall and placing of the monuments. We really have a prize up there at the Veterans Memorial Park. It's really a very, very nicely done and memorializes a lot of wonderful people that served this country. And I really appreciate that whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fosnot. Anyone else from council? Administration? No.
Oh, actually, all I was going to say was as long as we're thanking volunteers who've done work within the city,
Yes.
it might be apropos to thank the volunteers who both in April and this, a couple of weeks ago, helped plant street trees. This most recent batch along Cumberland Boulevard. Our annual receipt of the Tree Vitalize grant is partly predicated on the fact that we bring together both the community volunteers and our Streets and Parks Department. The Streets and Parks Department makes it easy to come through and plant trees, but it also is wonderful both to that Penn College students and a local contractor as well volunteer their time to help get those trees in the ground. And I think once again provides what appears to be some valuable training to the students themselves who actually seem to benefit from the experience. So.
Good point.
I have
Mayor-
one more question.
Yeah.
Would it be okay for us to be able to give newly elected council members the same kind of documents that we receive week after week to help get them up to speed to what's going on or get them started? Is there anything legally that we can't do that?
Public record.
I think it just depends on what the documents are. I mean, because if they're public records, then there would be no issue with that. If they are records that are not public, it probably wouldn't be something you'd want to be giving to someone who hasn't yet taken the oath of office and assumed their positions.
How would council feel about something like that, if it's a public document? I just think it would be helpful to know what a resolution looks like and to how it's passed and what the steps are to go through that and to have that in hand to look at. I would find that to be very helpful. Yes.
Yes.
I think it would be. Ms. Frank, are these documents on our website? I haven't verified that in a while. Are they on our website before the meeting at this point?
Not before the meeting, but after the meeting, I post them on Fridays. All the documents are on the website on Fridays.
So probably it would be helpful for them to have them ahead of time, it would seem.
I think so, before
yeah.
the meeting.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Well, and perhaps all of our freshmen, freshwomen, whatever, council people, should make that decision for themselves. But if they'd like copies, it seems like that would be more than, right, an absolute legal right, among other things.
We have a show of hands from the audience.
We can contact Janice, I think, on their own.
Yeah.
But,
Are we done? Thank you for that good suggestion, Jerry. Mayor Campana.
Good evening. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of City Council. At this table is my administration's 2020 budget proposal, which maintains all existing city vital services, focuses on improving public safety initiatives, provides for resources to continue downtown revitalization efforts, provides more infrastructure improvements, and works to gain additional city revenue. The 2020 budget is a good one. My staff and I worked hard to craft a budget to meet the city needs. Our 0% tax increase maintains the city's tax rate at 15.47
mills. The city will continue to deliver effective and efficient services to the citizens of Williamsport at an affordable cost to taxpayers. The 2020 budget highlights and other significant initiatives are the following. Adds 2 more police officers from last year's budget. It proposes 49 police officers. Provides $1 million for the city's annual street resurfacing projects. Incorporates a 5% increase in health care premiums. Budgets $200,000 for MS4 Chesapeake Bay PRP plan. Budgets $100,000 for flood levy certification. Adds a 3rd shift sweeper / Graphius Run monitor employee. Continues funding for economic development and grant writing consultants. Contract services for RFP needs. That's something we've talked about for a period of time, and we will have legal services to be able to make those RFPs. Contract services for revenue in regards to the franchise agreement. This gives us an opportunity to bring additional dollars into the city. And maintains 2 summer parks program. The city administration looks forward to working with City Council to adopt the 2020 budget and hopes everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving. And finally, at the conclusion of this meeting, council members, please pick up the 2020 budget binder from Mr. Pavlak at this table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Quintana. Any other comments from administration tonight? Comments from the Chief Hagan? You looked at me. Are you gonna? Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Any comments from the public tonight?
Good evening, Ralph Keller, 203 U Street. President Allison and council members, being the holiday season, I'm here for my annual plug for the Will Huffman Memorial Toy Train Expo. This was founded by Will many years ago, 29 to be exact. We've been doing this for 29 years, and although Will unfortunately is no longer with us, his sons Bruce and Eric continue the tradition. And I just want to make everyone aware, it is this weekend. We've been setting up all week for it. Saturday from 10 till 4, Sunday from 11 till 4. It will be in 2 locations, as it has been the last few years. It was in the old Park Home, now Park Place, the 4th and Campbell. We outgrew that, and we will have operating displays there, as well as the Tabor Museum of the Lycoming County Historical Society, and that's where I personally will be. We'll have about a dozen displays, the larger displays over there. So if you're coming, please make sure you come to both places. Additionally, I understand, Mr. Nichols, if I'm correct, that the city's transportation museum will also be open as a part of that. And admission is $2 for adults, children are free. The money goes to charity. We get nothing out of it except the enjoyment of doing it. Just a word about it, if people are not familiar with what this is, it's not a show, swap meet, trains for sale, that kind of thing. These are all running displays where hobbyists like myself bring our personal trains down and we build layouts. You will see operating layouts. I personally will have 5 trains on my table running from a 1930 standard gauge up to a brand new Lionel system with what I think is a really killer and interesting Halloween-themed sound system. So please come Saturday and Sunday, make it worth our while. We go to a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of expense to do this. Bring the kids, come up Saturday or Sunday, but please come to both places. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Anyone else from the public tonight? Seeing no one, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.